Yo, this is your favorite friendly neighborhood Toronto, and today we're going to be going over details and my impressions of the recently announced PlayStation 5 controller dubbed the DualSense. Before I can even get into the design and the features, let's talk about the biggest surprise here. I feel like it's been getting glossed over a lot. Like, who didn't think that the next controller by Sony was going to be called DualShock 5? No, seriously, like, everybody and their grandma Jones, when talking about next gen, just assumed, and understandably so, that the PlayStation 5's controller would be called DualShock 5. I mean, even in the Wired article with Mark Cerny back in October 2019, Peter Rubin said, the controller that history suggests will one day be called DualShock 5, though Sony just says it doesn't have a name yet. I mean, I can't lie, in hindsight, Sony was leaving us some breadcrumbs, but after reading that sentence at the time, I was like, come on Sony, who you fooling? You know that Sony knows that we know they're naming the controller DualShock 5. Like, there's no need to be playing coy. But boy, Sony, you have me and some others out here fooled. I mean, it's going to take me some time to say DualSense naturally without pre-thinking about saying it. I get what you guys were going for with the name change, but I still prefer DualShock 5. It just kind of rolls off my tongue better. And the sequential numbering of the DualShock was in line with the consoles it was paired with. It's obviously not a huge deal, as it won't stop me from picking up the controller, especially since there's a lot of interesting features here that are being offered that I really do like. Now, let's talk about the design. With the new striking two-tone design that, when I first saw a picture of it, I legit thought it was a mock-up some fan did, until I saw a photo credit given to Sony. Now, I know there's some people out there who are not fond of the two-tone look of the controller, or that the DualSense is primarily white, but personally, I'm loving the new direction and I will talk more about the color later in the video. But looking at the two-tone design, it kind of gives the controller a dynamic and futuristic look, and this is aided by the light bars that are just hugging the touchpad's left and right sides. And the bulk and size, judging by the official release photos by Sony, has the DualSense silhouette looking very similar to the Xbox controllers, which honestly has incredible comfort levels. I won't be able to obviously verify the DualSense's comfort until I get the controllers in my hands, of course, but trust me, I'm counting down the days until I get to. Some other small details that I personally like is the positioning of the light bars flanking both sides of the reshaped and larger touchpad, as well as the PlayStation button that is now in the shape of the actual PlayStation logo instead of it being just a circular button with the image of the PlayStation logo on it. Another change that can be found is the shapes on the face button are now muted and no longer have the designated color. To me, it's these small details that really add to the whole premium vibe of the DualSense. But I've also heard from some people who dislike the DualSense that's going to be white, and that some people are going to dislike that it's a two-tone design, or even that the face buttons are muted. For me, I prefer black as the standard color as it fits in with my entertainment a whole lot better. But after looking at Photoshop pictures of the DualSense that is all black with the colored face buttons, the controller just loses a futuristic look, and while the colors of the face button are iconic, it does look less premium to me. It's also not the first time Sony bypassed the colors, as they did not include them with the PlayStation Vita, which worked for that piece of hardware. But on a side note, it's funny how people are talking about the white color of the DualSense and it getting messy or what have you, but honestly, I didn't hear that talk when it came to the 360 controller, the Nintendo Wii, even the PS4 Destiny bundle, which came with the all-white controller. Now, this does tie into one of my reasons why I think the two-tone design exists in the first place, which is because the part of the controller that could get the dirtiest the easiest is the analog sticks, mainly due to the materials that it's using, which I've seen start to yellow on controllers before. So having that part black does mitigate the issue, and also by not having one solid color, I do find that the controller just looks more dynamic. And then the other reason I think the two-tone design exists is for more customization options. Just look at the amount of different concept fans have already come up with. So I can see some amazing special editions coming out in the future, but more importantly, this just means PlayStation, and I really hope Jim Ryan is listening to this, because you guys need to take a page out of Xbox's handbook and have a design labs so we can customize our own controllers. So if someone wants the colored face buttons, they could, or they could choose their own colors, change the color of the touchpad or the PlayStation buttons exclusive from the face of the controller, and then we can add our own logos and designs to the controller's grip or the rear of it. They can make it as extensive as possible and even allow players to have asymmetric analog sticks. I mean, like, there really shouldn't be any reason at this point in the game that there shouldn't be a platform so we could customize our controllers. So Sony, please get this done. because you guys have made a great controller. Now it's just time to give us the abilities to make it our own. Now, switching gears, it doesn't seem like Sony's making the DualSense bigger just for the sake of it. Over on the PlayStation blog, the Senior VP of Platform Planning and Management, Hideki Nishinu, said, "We also incorporated adaptive triggers into the L2 and R2 buttons. This provided us with an exciting challenge to design a new controller that builds off the current generation, while taking into account the new features we were adding. For example, with the adaptive triggers, we had to consider how the components would fit into the hardware without giving it a bulky feeling." And now this leads us right into the feature that I'm the most excited about, and that is the adaptive triggers. As with Sony's messaging throughout all of 2020, things haven't been extremely clear. This has many people thinking that the adaptive triggers is just a rebranding of the same feature that you could find in this Xbox Series X with just having rumbles in the trigger. But it's much more than that. I don't even think there's any rumble in the triggers on the DualSense, to be honest with you. But if we can go back to Mark Cerny's Wired interview, it's written that the controller does have some features Cerny's more interested in acknowledging. One is adaptive triggers that can offer varying levels of resistance to make shooting a bow and arrow feel like the real thing. The tension increases as you pull the arrow back, or making a machine gun feel far different from a shotgun. So as you can see, a much better job is done here at describing what the adaptive triggers do in this article than in the blog post. But what I do want to highlight is the area where it says the different levels of resistance, because that's telling you exactly what the adaptive triggers are. So for any Grandma Jones, if you're listening, this feature allows the triggers to be programmed so that you could change how hard it is to be pulled. And I know this is going to sound hyperbolic, but honestly, this feature, in my opinion, is going to be a game changer and can help change gaming to become more immersive, especially in conjunction with something like the PlayStation VR. Again, for me, it's all about how we're interacting with our games. More people like to reference the pulling of a bow and arrow, but I can see it going much further than that, such as driving different vehicles that have different resistance levels for accelerating. And an RPG where you have upgrading levels for a character, where when you upgrade, you will have lower resistance in the triggers, allowing for faster activations of certain abilities and actions. And these are just some of the ideals that I'm just spitballing here. Given more creative talent and time, I'm sure game developers can come up with some amazing things to do with those adaptive triggers. Next, we got haptic feedback, and this has got to be my second most anticipated feature, and it working in conjunction with the adaptive triggers has me all the way amped. Where the adaptive triggers are trying to shape the way we interact with games, I believe haptic feedback is looking to evolve the way games interact with us. Again, referencing that same article, Peter Rubin said, "The haptics can enable some astonishing effects. First, I played through a series of short demos courtesy of the same Japan studio team that designed PlayStation VR's Astrobot Rescue Mission. In the most impressive, I ran a character through a platform level featuring a number of different surfaces, all of which gave distinct and surprisingly immersive tactile experiences. Sand felt slow and sloggy, mud felt slow and soggy." Now, honestly, all this is very exciting, but I do have to temper my excitement just a bit until the DualSense is out there in the wild to be used, so we can see if the highly programmable haptic feedback system that is in place can truly deliver those minute tactile differences. A lot of questions do come up with how well this feature can be implemented, if it's difficult for developers to program, will they even dedicate resources to implementing it, and will it be on par with the original Nintendo Switch's haptic feedback offering, or is it expanding on it? And also, with some consumers not having used the Nintendo Switch and experiencing the haptic feedback for themselves, it can be a very difficult thing to try to convey in the same way that the PlayStation VR was. But I plan to go into some of the marketing challenges that Sony has in front of them for this generation in a later video. But back to the haptic feedback, and let my mind go wild for a bit. I can see there being scenarios where you're aiming down the scope and you get the feeling of your heartbeat and the breathing coming through the controller, or driving a boat and feeling the small differences of the small and large waves crashing against the boat, or summoning different elemental abilities, and the haptic feedback is able to help you distinguish which ability is currently equipped, so you know if you have your fire-based ability attached versus the water earth-based ability. Again, I do have to preface this with if the haptic feedback works as good as advertised and can truly deliver granular sensations, probably hence the DualSense name, there's huge potential for this feature to bring us even closer to our games with immersion. But then when you have a journalist computer and it's not actually marked Sony saying things like, on ice, a high frequency response made the thumbsticks really feel like my character was gliding. Jumping into a pool, I got the sensation of resistance of the water. On a wooden bridge, a bouncy sensation. That stuff there really does build more faith in the DualSense's haptic feedback capabilities. So now we have the share button, which is no longer called the share button. It's been rebranded to the create button. Sony hasn't gone into details about what it would entail, but what are we here for if not to speculate and let our imaginations get loose? I believe the current share button functions are going to be retained, with taking screenshots, capturing gameplay, and broadcasting. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of quality of life improvements in that area as well, making it more intuitive to upload and capture. The more intriguing part is the create aspect of the whole renaming of the button. It really makes me think that this is where PlayStation is putting the most emphasis on, as it did with sharing during the PlayStation 4 generation. Now, as I'm sure most of you have probably already forgotten, there's actually an application on your PlayStation 4 called Share Factory. It pretty much allows you to edit your gameplay videos together with transitions, overlays, and music, a couple other things as well. I believe Sony's plans are to integrate this application with the share button while improving the ease of use and robustness of this feature. This could include things like customizing the way your streams look with more custom logos, dynamic widgets, kind of making it more Twitch-like. Sony may even be making their own video platform, which is another reason why they could have had that deal with Microsoft to use their Azure services. And also imagine this being a situation where gamers then can create their gameplay sections and edit in voiceovers with the built-in mic on the DualSense, along with adding overlays highlighting certain areas on the screen to focus on. And this would be essentially players making their own walkthroughs. Now, tying this in with an existing Sony patent where you can ask PlayStation for help, it would then analyze your screen to see what game you were playing and where in the game you were. And then based off the information it gathered, it would then push other players' created walkthroughs that were relevant to your situation, allowing you to see what other players did to get past those sections, right? So expanding on that idea as well, you can even have a point system or a reward system that was put in place. So you can get a point or a reward for having other players use your video, and then points can be used to show engagement levels in the community, or you can even be able to redeem special icons for your avatar to be placed beside your PSN ID. Again, we really don't know anything until Sony officially releases details on the create button, but that would be just crazy if something like that was going to happen. And now going back to the blog post, Hideki Nishino said, "We also took thoughtful consideration into ways to maintain a strong battery life for DualSense's rechargeable battery, which anyone using a DualShock 4 would know that the battery life could use some much needed improvement. Thankfully, it looks like improvements will be implemented, but paying closer attention to the language that was being used, you can see nothing absolute was said, but it was all subjective. Like, what does a strong battery mean for Sony? Is it lasting 10 to 15 hours or 5 to 7 hours? Either way it goes, there's going to be a well-welcomed USB-C input on the DualSense to get it charged quickly." Now, the last features I want to delve into would be the mic array and the speaker. The speaker, which isn't new to the PlayStation controller, but there have been a lot of improvements that have been made to make it louder. During the PlayStation 4 era, this feature wasn't used much amongst the developers, but with increased emphasis on immersion through the controller, I feel like it will be and should be utilized a lot more. Now, also take the scenario that I talked about earlier with the boat and the haptic feedback. Now, also add on to that and imagine feeling the waves crashing against the boat, and while that was happening, you can hear those specific waves coming through the controller while the separate distant waves and other gameplay sounds are bumping through your TV and sound systems, right? So it's just another way of adding so much more immersion to the whole experience. And another situation could be if you were a character in an RPG and you equip the fire ability, you can hear the sizzle of the fire or the gust of wind blowing if you had an air ability equipped. Now, all it really takes is just to make sure that the sound loudness is actually just a lot louder than it was before with the DualShock 4. If they have that with sound quality, this immersion that they're going for should be amazing coming this gen. And then there's the built-in microphone array. And funny enough, I recently was playing Warzone with some friends, and for some reason these noobs didn't have a mic available. One of my friends actually misplaced hers, and then my boy, he ended up breaking his. And now this would have been a perfect situation for using the built-in mic. Now my excitement could grow even a bit more if there's gameplay mechanics that could be derived from having that mic on the controller. Just think about Mario DS for the Nintendo DS, where you could blow into the microphone to get more balloons. Now, Nishinu talked about the microphone being used to have just quick conversations with friends, but if we go back to last year in 2019, Sony had filed for a patent for an AI-powered voice assistant, and I wouldn't be surprised if something along those lines is revealed to be the true reason for the inclusion of the built-in microphone. Now, I can't see Sony adding the mic to allow people to converse when they could easily improve on the Bluetooth capabilities of the console to allow devices like AirPods or Galaxy Buds. Also, the DualSense still has a 3mm jack included on the bottom to make use of the headsets that just make it easier to have those conversations. So spending the extra time and money to standardize game and party chat seems a little far-fetched to me, but developing an AI assistant, I could definitely see that being a feature PlayStation would want to standardize. So you guys let me know, what do you think about the DualSense controller? Do you like it or not? And tell me why you like it and why don't you like it. What features are you most excited for and what features are you least excited for? What interesting gameplay ideas do you think these features could be used for? Tell me, did any of my ideas get you excited for the potential possibilities? I'm also looking forward to engaging and continuing the conversation with the community in the comments. This ended up being a lot longer of a video than I expected, but thank you for those who made it through to the end. I do have another video talking about what makes these features more integral than gimmicks coming very soon, as well as why I think the reveal of this controller was random and not how Sony wanted it to be revealed, so keep an eye out for those. Please like, share, and subscribe. Hit the bell notification so you don't miss any of the videos that get uploaded. It really does a lot in helping me grow this channel. I will have all the details on where you can follow and interact with everything Toronto in the description. That's everything for now, so it's not bye, but I see you later on the next one. And I'm out!